Hey there, Dave here, and I want to share why I'm sitting in my kitchen at 2:30 p.m. on a weekday instead of being at work. I've made 4 phone calls and sent a text in the past 2 hours, spending 1 hour and 45 minutes stewing and 15 minutes taking action that could potentially disrupt many lives. You see. Excuse me, someone's at the door. Oh, hi, sweetie. Where's Fiona? I called Stuart, and he came home early. He'll pick her up from kinder and look after her until I get home. Linda, I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. He's a great guy. I know it's typical for a father to dislike his son-in-law, but you chose so well that I can't help but like him. I chuckled at my daughter's grim smile. We share a sense of humor. Have you told Pete yet, Dad? No, your brother is at sea right now. I'll email him later. Okay, Dad. I'm here for you, you know that. Yeah, thanks, sweetie. We fell silent for a while. Why would she do this to you, Dad? I don't know, darling. Why? Didn't she say anything? I haven't actually spoken to her yet. You mean she's still? Yep. I watched as my daughter's troubled eyes glanced towards the stairs leading up to the master bedroom. I wanted to wait so she could tell us all why she did it at the same time. All? Yeah, I've invited a few more guests. They should be here shortly. What are you going to do? No more and no less than I have to in order to survive this. So you already have a plan? Yep. Doesn't it depend on her reason? Why? The facts speak for themselves. The reason is irrelevant. But she may have been blackmailed. Believe me, if you saw what I saw and heard what I heard, you'd know she wasn't being blackmailed. Linda looked into my eyes for a moment. I thought you were taking this well, but I can see now, you're not, are you? No. I turned away. No daughter should see her father cry. What would you like me to do? You follow your conscience. I won't think any less of you, regardless of your decision. Thanks, Dad. Do you have any idea why she would do this? I have absolutely no idea, sweetie. I thought we had a good marriage until this morning. What happened this morning? Well, your mother has always been bad at lying and keeping secrets. It's just not in her nature. After 27 years together, I know her routines like my own. She showers every morning. Every Tuesday and Friday, she washes her hair, and she'll be in there for almost an hour. Every other day, it's about 30 minutes. But this morning, she was in there for almost an hour and a half. When I asked her plans for the day, she said nothing unusual, just work. But she was lying. Every other time she thought she'd be late for work, she'd get agitated. This morning, she was as calm as could be. That's when I knew she had no intention of going to work. So, what did you do? I called off work and parked just up the street. I was going to follow her when she left, but she didn't go anywhere. I stayed there until that guy she works with at the real estate office turned up at about 11:30. I crept in and confirmed it was what I expected, then thought about what I was going to do. After that, I made a few phone calls, and here we are. Were there any clues, Dad, before today? I thought you guys were good. No, sweetie, nothing. As far as I knew, I loved her and she loved me. We were going to work for a few more years, then retire and live happily ever after. Dad, I have to ask you this. Did you ever? Don't even say it, Linda. No, I have never betrayed your mother. I have never disrespected a woman that way in my life. Even when our sex life pretty much died a couple of years ago, I just sucked it up. What? You haven't had sex in 2 years? Nope. Your mother was never an overtly sexual being. She reckoned she just didn't enjoy it that much. Sure, she seemed to enjoy it when we started, but it was the starting that was the problem. When she hit menopause 2 years ago, whatever I used to get just dried up completely. So when you found her today, it must have hit you hard? I let my steely gaze answer for me. Just then, there was another soft knock on the door. I opened it to see my father-in-law standing there. "Come in, Paul." "Thanks, Dave." "Where is she?" "Upstairs in our bedroom." "Okay, I have to see for myself." "I understand." "Go ahead, sir. Just don't disturb her, please." The old man went up the stairs and came down a minute later, but much more than a minute older. He slumped in a chair. I poured him a whiskey, which he gulped. "I can't believe she would do that to you. She knows how devastated you were when that fiancé of yours cheated on you. She helped pick up your pieces after all. Not only that, she knows how devastated I was when I caught her mother and she ran off with that shithead, abandoning me and the kids. Sorry, I have to get out of here. I guess a woman shouldn't see her granddad cry either." I walked him to the door. Linda made like she was going to follow us, but I waved her back. I wanted the old guy to maintain what pride he had left. He stood on the porch and gripped my shoulders for support. "Do what you have to do, son, but nothing physical, okay?" I couldn't stand by and see that. "Don't worry, Dad. I won't harm a hair on your daughter's head. But as for the other shit, I apologize for what I am about to do to your daughter. A guy has to do what he has to do." He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. He shuffled to his car and drove slowly away, a broken man. I rang his son, my wife's brother, and without going into detail, suggested he go and see his dad to offer support. I was just hanging up when I heard the upstairs toilet flush. Nap time must be over. I rejoined Linda, and we sat in silence for a few minutes. Shortly, we heard a bed creaking and sounds of passion. "See, Linda? Does that sound like blackmail to you?" "No, Dad. How can you stand to sit here? Why don't you go up and beat the fucker's ass?" "Well, it's not easy, sweetie, but I have this ability to turn off my emotional side. Kind of disassociate myself from all the feelings, you know?" "Oh, is that where I get it from? So why torture yourself? Why not go upstairs and stop it? Kick the slut out?" There's one more visitor to come." Right on cue, there was another knock on the door. I opened it to a reasonable-looking lady a few years younger than me. Surprisingly, she had a boy and a girl with her who looked about mid to late teens. "Mr. Brown, is it?" "Yes, please call me Dave. I'm Jenny Smith, and these are my kids, Robert and Sarah. I picked them up from school. If what you say is true, I wanted them here. If for no other reason than to understand that it was their father that destroyed our family." I shook hands with Robert, which was surprisingly firm. I introduced them all to Linda. "You said you had proof, Dave." In answer to that, I walked over to the pants that were lying on the arm of the couch and pulled out a wallet. I handed it to Jenny. She opened it and looked at the driver's license. A tear escaped her eye. I guess she'd harbored some hope that what I'd said on the phone was wrong. Her face hardened suddenly. "Well, Dave, where are they?" In answer, I just held my finger to my lips in the international symbol for silence. We sat there listening to the grunts and groans. "Son of a bitch. You haven't confronted them yet?" "No, I wanted us to do it as a team, as it were. I just took some video for us, which I am happy to share with you. I also set up a voice recorder and slipped it under the bed. We can go now if you like. I suggest the children hold back until we can get the, performers decent." "Yes, you're right. Just hold on a moment, I have a locksmith standing by to change the locks on my house. I was just waiting to make sure you were right before giving them the go. I'm not surprised, really. This isn't the first time. He's a smooth-talking little shit." Linda and I waited patiently while she rang the locksmith, then her lawyer, and gave them both the go. We distracted her children from the noises by chatting about inanities. Jenny then pushed her shoulders back. "Okay. Let's do this." "Stop, please, John, I'm sore." She turned onto her back. As she rolled over, her eyes met mine. Her face fell, and she screamed. Her lover followed her gaze and saw me also. He started to rise, looking ridiculous with his cock swinging free. Once he was on his feet, he stopped and looked up at my face. I could see he was starting to get a really bad feeling about his physical safety in the next little while. That's right, shithead. I'm bigger and uglier than you, and please believe me, a fucking sight angrier. Why don't you just get back into that bed and cover up yourself and my ex-wife? He was an obedient guy, if nothing else. Within seconds, they were lying side by side under the covers. I noted that Tracy's expression had gone from shock to defiance. I let her speak first. Dave, I want a divorce. I've fallen in love with Joe, the guy here. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. We were going to tell you tomorrow. It's okay, dear wife, you've got it. By the way, I was going to find out his name was John Smith eventually, wasn't I? I could see this shocked them. Not the smartest move to leave your wallet in your pants pocket downstairs, John. Tracy, just idle curiosity, but why did you end our marriage this way? You had to know catching you cheating would devastate me. Finally, I saw some shame on her face. I'm sorry, David. We couldn't help falling in love. I accept that, dear. You could have avoided putting the cart before the horse, though. You could have avoided sleeping with this guy before announcing you wanted a divorce, couldn't you? I'm sorry, David. I just wanted to know that John and I were compatible, you know. We didn't want you to see us. If it helps, this was the first time. What? Test drive the new model sort of thing? Try him out for size? Don't be crude, David. I don't want to end our marriage fighting. Can't we just part as friends? This almost got through my mental defenses. I'm guessing that in the pressure of this situation, she was quoting from tomorrow's pre-rehearsed speech. You've got to be kidding. You lie there in MY bed, with another guy's cum leaking down your leg, and you want to part as friends. I don't think so. We stared at each other until Tracy dropped her eyes. I decided it was time to start evening the pain scores. Your dad asked me to tell you how disappointed he is in you. He kind of hoped you wouldn't turn out as big a slut as your mother. You didn't? Tracy's face had gone sheet white. I did. I'm surprised you didn't see him. He was standing right here not half an hour ago. Why? Because I wanted you to start feeling some of the pain I've been feeling since this guy showed up. I don't know what the kids will make of it all. Oh God, Dave, please don't tell the kids. Please. Sorry, dear, too late. Linda took that exact moment to step into view in the doorway. Tracy glanced over at the movement, squealed, then hid her face under the sheets. Don't bother, Mom. It doesn't work for ostriches, and it won't work for you. Tracy just stayed under the sheets, moaning. Her bed partner just kept looking really uncomfortable. When Dad called me, I wanted to believe the best of you. I couldn't fathom that you would do this to him. But now that I've seen it for myself, I understand why he reached out to me. If I hadn't witnessed it with my own eyes, I might have encouraged him to forgive you. But seeing you like this, I know that's never going to happen. Silence, broken only by deep sobs, was the response. Well, Mom, if you have nothing more to say, then I'll say it all. We won't need you to babysit your granddaughter this weekend. Actually, if cutting you off from seeing her will protect her from your harmful influence, then consider this the end of your visits with her. A pitiful noob came from under the sheets. Linda was now in tears herself. You should have seen Granddad's face earlier. You broke his heart. She tried to run, but I caught and embraced her. She pulled away and rushed downstairs. Shortly afterward, we heard the front door slam. It was a couple of minutes before Tracy reappeared with red eyes. Why did you have to do that, David? Because you haven't experienced even a fraction of the pain I have, Tracy. You haven't felt like your heart was ripped out and stomped on. But you will, I promise you that. I'm tired of this charade. Just leave my house, both of you. Defiance flashed across Tracy's face. If anyone is leaving this house, it's going to be you. I used the power of attorney you gave me to transfer the deeds into my name only. Tracy seemed taken aback by the vehemence of her own words. She could see by my expression that she had only fueled my anger further and realized she was digging herself deeper into a moral pit. I regained my composure quickly. Shocking news reaches a point where it stops hurting much. I had reached that point 2 hours ago. How do you plan to afford the mortgage, Tracy? We worked it out, David. With my salary, commissions, and John's income, we'll manage it just fine. What salary, Tracy? Your boss, Mr. Johnson, wanted me to inform you both that you're fired. He would have told you himself, but apparently your phones are off. As a good Christian, he didn't take kindly to two married individuals like you cheating on company time. You didn't tell him, Dave. Please tell me you didn't. I did. I even sent him some lovely photographs. Tracy's partner finally spoke up. How did you know I'm married? Driver's license, remember? A quick check in the phone book, a phone call, easy. Your wife, Jenny, about 5 feet 6 inches, pretty, red hair. Children, Robert and Sarah, seem like decent kids. Tell me, were you planning to hurt them as much as this woman was planning to hurt me? Please, Mr. Brown, don't tell my wife. Why not? Haven't you emptied all your bank accounts yet, preparing to sail off into the sunset with my wife? She was going to get the house. Please, give me a chance to break it to her gently. She doesn't deserve this. I still care for her in my own way. She shouldn't have to find out like this. What? She shouldn't find out the way I did, you mean? Yes, you're right. Unfortunately, it's too late. I didn't need to turn around to know exactly when Jenny and her children walked in the door. His face said it all. The expression was priceless. Yes, it's way too late, my dear husband. I'll forever be grateful to Mr. Brown here for bringing this to my attention. Just so you know, the video he's giving me should be enough to enforce the post-nup we had drawn up the last time I forgave you. Tracy's gaze shifted to her bed partner. In my detached state, I idly wondered why. Was it because he was a serial cheater? Or was it the realization that their financial plans were now ruined? The locks should have been changed on my house by now. If you want to stop by in the morning to collect your things, they'll be in the dumpster I intend to hire this afternoon. Throughout this tirade, poor John had simply looked at his own feet with an expression of horror. I later learned that he was the one who initially seduced Tracy, but the test drive had been her idea. His plan had actually been to tell his wife and family the next day as well. He looked sorrowfully at his wife, then briefly at his kids, but couldn't hold their gaze for long. Jenny was losing control, but gathered herself momentarily. Well, kids, if you ever wondered what a deceitful person looks like, then take a good look. Tracy cringed under their combined stare. Jenny grabbed the kids and stormed out. I approached the bed and snarled at the cowering couple. Just get out of my house. You have no idea of the rage I'm feeling right now. I'll be back in 2 hours or so, and I expect you both to be gone by then. Tracy, don't even think about trying to cheat me. If you do, your chances of living happily ever after, or even living at all, will go from very slim to non-existent. Got it? A glance at my face convinced them of the seriousness of my intentions. I ran after Jenny and caught up with them before they drove off. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop, which we did. We comforted each other and tried to guide the kids through the ordeal to come. Robert proved to be remarkably mature for his age and helped comfort his crying sister. I really wish her father were here to witness his daughter's pain. I gave Jenny my card and offered to assist her in any way I could. We parted on amicable terms, I believe. The following week was incredibly difficult. Despite my ability to remain composed in a crisis, it didn't alleviate the pain, only delayed it. I was occupied with work and meetings with lawyers who were particularly interested in the evidence I had, especially the voice recordings from under the bed. They revealed conversations where the two lovers detailed their plans to secure the majority of the marital assets from both households. Tracy justified it as her entitlement due to my higher earning capacity. While divorces typically entailed an equal split, my lawyer informed me that judges could deviate from this if presented with evidence of premeditated deceit, which often influenced their decisions. Linda insisted on listening to the recordings as well. We were both shocked by our mother's planned malice. Linda attempted to confront her mother for an explanation, but received nothing to convince her that it wasn't purely malicious. I put on a brave front for Linda and maintained a strong voice when my son called, but inwardly, I was struggling. The weekend after the incident, I received a welcome call from Jenny. She was grateful to mow her own lawns, but was unfamiliar with the mower's operation. After giving her some lessons on Sunday and assisting with other maintenance tasks, I was invited to stay for dinner. We were still conversing after the kids had gone to bed when the conversation turned serious. "How are you holding up, Jenny?" "As well as can be expected, Dave, thanks for asking. I think I've been mentally preparing myself for this for years. Deep down, I knew it would happen again. My lawyers have uncovered his plans for our finances and put a stop to it all. I couldn't believe he was planning to leave us practically destitute. My lawyers say I'll get the house, child support, alimony, and 90% of the assets, thanks to your evidence and the post-nup. Glad I could be of help, Jen. My lawyers mentioned something similar, but with only 50 to 70% of the assets. He came begging 2 days ago. I think his lawyers told him the same things mine did, and the thought of financial ruin terrified him. I told him to leave. My only concern now is the impact on the kids. Sarah is at an age where she can thrive without a father, but I'm worried about Rob. I understand, Jen. At his age, a boy needs a positive male role model. I've been thinking about that. Can I offer to fill that role? I'd be honored to be there for him and provide support." Jenny fell silent for a moment, visibly conflicted. "I know your ego may be bruised right now, Dave, so I'm not sure how." "Don't worry about that, Jen. Supporting Rob is all that matters to me at the moment." Relief washed over her face, and we discussed the details for a while. "And how about you, Dave? Are you coping okay?" "I don't know, Jen. I'm still incredibly confused. I don't understand what I did to make her hate me so much. Discovering her with John just shattered me. It makes me question my own masculinity. Was I so inadequate that? I don't know. Even after everything, damaging her relationship with her kids, her father, probably our mutual friends, and getting her fired, it still doesn't feel like enough. I still feel incomplete." "I completely understand, Dave." Jenny gazed at me for a moment, clearly deliberating her next words with herself. Finally, she spoke. "You know what you need to do to regain your sense of manhood, Dave." Her eyes bore into mine with determination. "Yes, I do, Jen." "Good. How far are you willing to go, Jen?" Her voice matched the steel in her eyes. "Hell truly hath no fury like a woman scorned." "As far as you feel necessary to exorcise your demons, Dave. You're too good a man to let lingering pain taint the rest of your life. Let it all out, Dave." "Okay. I'll need an alibi." "You'll have one, trust me." When she revealed her idea for an alibi, we both burst into laughter. It was exactly what I needed. But our conversation was far from over. "What about you, Jen? Do you feel the need for revenge against Tracy?" "Good Lord, no. I know what a smooth-talking little scoundrel he can be. Your poor wife never stood a chance. I almost pity her. We parted as friends, and she promised to talk to Rob about helping me restore an old car I owned. He was interested, and that became our routine for the next 6 weeks. After school, he'd come over, and we'd work on the car together. I took every opportunity to instill values in him, and we became close buddies. But once I dropped him off at home, it was a different story. I spent all my free time spying on the happy couple. With our bank accounts frozen by the lawyers, John and Tracy couldn't afford their own place. Tracy stayed with one of her few remaining friends, and John did the same with one of his. They spent most evenings together before going their separate ways late at night. Eventually, I established a pattern and called Jenny one Thursday night to announce that the next night was the night. She arranged for the kids to stay at her parents' house. I parked my car in her driveway, wheeled out an old motorcycle of John's, and started it a block away from her house. Once at his friend's place, I surveyed the area and quietly shot out the streetlight with my air pistol. Then I waited in the bushes by his driveway. He surprised me by arriving in a cab 40 minutes later, rather than by car. It became apparent why when I saw his unsteady steps. He'd been drinking. Now, I've never been one for sucker punches. My sense of honor demanded a fair fight. Well, as fair as screwing a guy's wife behind his back without him even knowing you exist. I stepped in front of him. "Hi, John." He froze, and in the dim light, I saw recognition dawn in his eyes. He didn't react as I expected. But then again, they don't call it Dutch courage for nothing. "Well, if it isn't the guy who couldn't control his woman," he taunted. His words ignited a fury within me, shattering my carefully laid plan of restraint. The beast of betrayal within me erupted, and I struck him with a powerful blow to the jaw, sending him crashing to the ground. The details afterward are hazy in my memory, but later reports suggest a series of vicious kicks and blows aimed at various parts of his body. Perhaps it was between 3 and 10 kicks, I can't recall exactly. Eventually, my rage subsided enough for me to execute the final step of my plan. I dragged his unconscious body and left him in the middle of the road, a possible victim of a hit-and-run. Returning to Jenny's house, I changed clothes in the shadows, disposing of my worn garments and gloves in a nearby dumpster. I then rode the motorbike back, careful to distance myself from the scene of the assault. Jenny eagerly awaited my return, unfazed by the deviation from our plan. In fact, she seemed rather pleased, grinning like a Cheshire cat as I recounted the events. After providing her with all the details, I excused myself to take a shower, ensuring no evidence remained. My knuckles showed no signs of injury or relief. As I rinsed my hair, I felt a cool breeze followed by warm skin enveloping me from behind. Jenny's arms encircled me, and she spoke softly, urging me to indulge in our desires. I couldn't resist her request, and we shared a passionate kiss, providing some much-needed release. Afterwards, she urged me to finish up and join her in the bedroom, an invitation I eagerly accepted. Damp from the shower, I claimed her with a primal intensity, discarding my usual considerations as a lover in favor of raw passion. As dawn approached, I awoke to find Jenny slipping back into bed beside me. She snuggled close, expressing her satisfaction with a playful comment about my performance. I responded with a gesture of affection, ensuring her pleasure once more before we drifted back to sleep. The morning brought breakfast and coffee, along with news of an incident involving my car's back window. Jenny had already notified the police, and my alibi held strong, reinforced by the testimony of a nosy neighbor. Despite the chaos of the previous night, I remained free from suspicion, thanks to Jenny's clever planning and our convincing performance. I encountered Tracy once more, approximately a week after her lover's unfortunate incident. She called to inform me of her intention to retrieve the remainder of her belongings. Upon learning that everything had been donated to charity, she insisted on coming over for a conversation nonetheless. As I awaited her arrival, I noticed her outside the window, engaged in a phone call beside her car. When she finally knocked on the door, I greeted her in my dressing gown, much to her disapproval. Politely, I requested her phone and handbag, placing them in the spare room to ensure no recording devices were present. We settled at the kitchen table, facing each other. "Dave, I've arranged with a friend to alert the police if I don't call within 60 minutes, she stated, emphasizing her safety measures. Acknowledging her caution with a nod, I remained silent, reserving my words for a specific purpose. "Dave, I just want to express how sorry I am for how our marriage ended," she began, attempting to justify her actions. "Save your breath, Tracy. I have no interest in listening to your attempts to absolve yourself of guilt by rationalizing why you sought to ruin me," I interjected firmly, halting her in her tracks. Her expression betrayed a mixture of surprise and confusion, as if she couldn't fathom my response. "Okay, Dave. Was it you who attacked John?" she inquired, her curiosity evident. "Yes," I confirmed, catching her off guard with my straightforward admission. "What?" she exclaimed, clearly taken aback by my honesty. "What's difficult to comprehend, Tracy?" You asked if I was responsible for his assault, and I confirmed it. It was me, I reiterated, maintaining my composure. But why? He hadn't done anything to you, she protested, struggling to grasp my motives. Think logically, Tracy. Infidelity doesn't impair cognitive abilities overnight. Witnessing you with him shattered my sense of masculinity, undermining my confidence and pride, I explained, highlighting the emotional impact of her actions. Her shock suggested she hadn't considered the ramifications of her betrayal from this perspective. That's the consequence of betrayal. Eventually, I realized I had two options: to resign myself to a desolate existence like your father, or to fight back against the corner you and your lover pushed me into. Is it really surprising that I chose the latter? The only path that allows me to retain my dignity as a man. Does it surprise you? Yes, I confronted your boyfriend, and if necessary to uphold my self-respect, I would do it again. You forced this confrontation, Tracy. In a battle for survival, there can only be one victor. To prevent you and him from destroying me, I must stand firm and defend myself by any means necessary, I concluded, asserting my resolve. The words were uttered with a calm and chilling certainty that brooked no room for doubt. But I hoped that by isolating me from friends and family, and getting me fired, you were finished with me. John and I simply fell in love, Dave. It wasn't a choice. Can't you remember what it's like to be in love? Tracy pleaded, her voice wavering. Yes, Tracy, I can recall the past 8 weeks. As I mentioned before, perhaps falling in love wasn't your decision, but your actions afterward were. If you had come to me and said, Dave, I've fallen in love with someone else, I want a divorce, I would have been saddened but would have granted you your freedom or fought to win back your affection. It was the manner in which you declared your intentions, with malice and cruelty, that declared war on me. You betrayed everything I stand for and everything I believed you stood for, Dave responded firmly. What about now, Dave? Can you leave John and me in peace now that you've had your revenge? Tracy inquired. Yes, I believe I can. Mainly because I can't think of anything else to destroy, Dave replied. Thank you, Dave, Tracy said, a hint of relief in her voice. Don't celebrate too soon, Tracy. You should be more concerned about Johnny Boy's wife. She's a force to be reckoned with, trust me, Dave warned. At that moment, a voice echoed down the stairs from the master bedroom. Are you returning to bed, Dave? You promised me 6 orgasms a day and you're falling short, the voice teased. Who is that? Tracy asked, alarmed. Jenny, Dave responded calmly. With that, Tracy bolted, and Dave yelled a warning for her not to involve the police again. He then ascended the stairs to find a fully clothed Jenny, who embraced him until his tremors subsided. As for Tracy, she disappeared to distant lands, and Dave never attempted to locate or contact her again. Dave felt rejuvenated, considering revenge as the most potent antidote to depression. He resolved to move forward, leaving the past behind. While Dave and Jenny never embarked on a romantic relationship, they maintained a close friendship and supported each other. Under their guidance, Rob and Sarah flourished. Dave was protective of Jenny when potential suitors came around, warning them of dire consequences if they hurt her. One of them even sought Dave's blessing before proposing to Jenny, which he happily gave. Dave was deeply moved when Jenny asked him to walk her down the aisle at her wedding, a testament to their enduring bond. At the wedding, Jenny introduced me to an old friend of hers who had flown in. With my therapy complete and feeling well-balanced, I was considering asking Jenny to give me away at my wedding. Why not? Without the payback I exacted on the 2 cheaters, would I have recovered enough to lead a normal life? Absolutely not. Hello, I'm Tracy, and my life has taken a turn for the worse in the last 2 years. I thought I could justify what I did back then. However, justifying what I did last week will take some time. Let me explain. Reflecting on my life with Dave, it was good but had become stale. The only excitement I had left was my first granddaughter. So when John started showing interest in me, I felt like a teenager again. He was attentive and caring, and he swept me off my feet. Deep down, I knew what we had was wrong, but it felt so good. Our relationship progressed from conversations to dates to making out. Guilt was never an issue for me. By the time we kissed, I knew I loved him, and he loved me. We planned to leave our spouses and marry. A friend of mine, Carol, had gone through a messy divorce and warned me about the difficulties she faced engaging a lawyer because her ex had taken control of all the assets. That's why John and I quietly took control of everything. I didn't know how his wife would react, but I was sure Dave wouldn't be happy. We had often discussed what constituted cheating, and I realized I was already over the line before John and I made our announcement. I intended to give Dave whatever the courts demanded after the divorce. I just wanted to be in control and protect myself from any retaliation. Carol also asked me if I had slept with John yet. I hadn't enjoyed lovemaking much, but I needed to feel sexually attractive. My husband still found me desirable, and I wanted to maintain that feeling. If only I had felt the same spark for Dave that I had with John, the whole mess could have been avoided. So, Carol planted doubts in my head. What if John had a small penis or didn't last long in bed? I wanted sex to be enjoyable when I needed it. By this stage in my life, sex was more emotional than physical. I didn't expect John to be as good as Dave. Dave was considerate, gentle, and satisfied me. This led to my final disastrous betrayal of my marriage. My first encounter with John served two purposes: to test him out and as a bonding exercise to prepare us for the emotionally difficult tasks ahead. Honestly, I think I wanted to ensure John's commitment to our plans. At that point, I suspected he was quite weak-willed. I know what you're thinking. Did I consider the possibility of getting caught and the consequences it would have on Dave and my family? The simple answer is no. I never expected to be caught, and if I was, I never anticipated Dave's extreme reaction. As for the rest, I just didn't think about it, okay? I never compared myself to my mother. I was so young when she left us that she just didn't factor into my thoughts. Despite everything, I'd like to say that the sex with John was incredible. It wasn't. His penis wasn't tiny, but nowhere near as satisfying as Dave's. He lasted a decent amount of time, but it became uncomfortable for me after a few minutes. I found myself faking enjoyment, just as I used to with Dave. Men and their egos, I tell you. I still don't know how Dave found out about my one and only infidelity, and honestly, it doesn't matter to me. I was devastated when I saw the hurt in his eyes. I tried to justify it to myself later, but I couldn't. He had never done anything to deserve that. My guilt turned into defiance for a brief moment, but it didn't last long. The realization that my father had witnessed my transgression and my daughter's words crushed me. The look in John's daughter's eyes was almost as painful. I had no idea my husband was capable of such cruelty. When I received the call from the hospital about John's admission, I knew instinctively that Dave was involved. The doctors believed John's injuries were consistent with a hit-and-run accident, but I knew differently. That's why I called the police and gave them Dave's name and car license plate number. 2 days later, they informed me he was no longer a person of interest. That's why I stayed by John's side during the week he was in the hospital. I knew he needed my protection. Until 8 weeks ago, if you had asked me if Dave was capable of such a thing, I would have said no. But during those 15 minutes in my old bedroom, I saw a glimpse of the new, monstrous Dave. A monster that I knew I had created. A monster capable of unlimited cruelty. Yes, I just knew it was Dave. That's why, just before John was discharged, I called Dave and arranged to meet at our old house. This had to stop. Hadn't he gotten enough revenge yet? John and I were both shattered. It was time to move on. Walking up to my front door felt melancholic. The conversation ahead was going to be even sadder. How had I gone from loving a man to seeing him as the enemy in such a short time? Before ringing the bell, I called Carol and told her to call the police if she didn't hear from me in an hour. Dave greeted me at the door wearing a dressing gown, which was unusual. His expression was unreadable as he invited me in. When he requested my phone and handbag, I mentally kicked myself for not bringing a recorder. But then I realized it wouldn't matter. He would never admit to the assault. As I looked at the man I had known for over 27 years, a stranger seemed to stare back at me. I felt genuine remorse for how our marriage ended, and I hoped explaining my actions would ease his pain and perhaps soften his stance. However, he shut me down immediately, showing no interest in hearing my reasons. His tone was harsh, and his face betrayed no emotion. I didn't recognize this person before me. His casual admission to beating up John shocked me. Hearing his reasons made me understand why he did it, but it didn't alleviate my guilt. I realized how self-centered I had become, rationalizing actions that were completely unacceptable. Dave's expression hinted that our punishment wasn't over yet. My question about remembering love was part of a rehearsed speech, but his response was like a dagger to my heart. How could a fundamentally decent person feel otherwise? I knew I had to leave. I asked about future revenge merely to gauge his intentions. Dave's mention of John's wife being a physical threat gave me a sudden insight. I put myself in her shoes and shuddered at the thought of facing what I had done to her. When I learned she was upstairs, I fled. I picked up John from the hospital, and we left together. Both divorces were finalized, and we received the paperwork at a P.O. box in a town far from our new home. Living anonymously, without friends, and constantly looking over our shoulders was incredibly stressful. Money was tight, and the only jobs we could find were commission-based real estate gigs, with long dry spells between sales. John and I got married 6 months later, but looking back, it was a mistake. We were like two castaways seeking refuge together, perhaps trying to retroactively justify the pain we had caused others, especially ourselves. My recent troubles began innocently enough. John's single-functioning testicle rendered him unable to achieve an erection, leading to moodiness, insecurity, and jealousy. It's tough to build a marriage on infidelity from the get-go. His grumpiness affected me too, prompting a friend to suggest hormone replacement therapy, HRT, as a solution. Despite cost concerns, a single doctor's visit made life blissfully normal again. However, the estrogen tablets had an unexpected side effect, a revived libido. While the doctor smirked at this, it proved detrimental given John's condition. My sexual desires surged, but John rejected oral sex, and masturbation only provided temporary relief. I had to hide my vibrators to avoid setting him off. When a younger colleague at work showed interest, I felt flattered and responded, despite the stress of hiding our encounters from John's intense jealousy. The first kiss triggered a strong déjà vu, reminding me of past mistakes. Determined not to cheat again, I approached John and gently explained my need for a lover. I promised discretion and assured him it was purely physical. His silent acceptance seemed reluctant but consent nonetheless. After a brief encounter with my new lover, I returned home to find John missing, later discovering him deceased by suicide. I anticipated retaliation but received only a suicide note and a letter to his attorney. The note was emailed to our friends, leading to their swift rejection, while the letter changed his beneficiaries to his children. Once again, I learned the hard way, never tamper with a man's pride. The end. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel not to miss new videos.